Finally, we are going to get a blockbuster new launch in the OCR area after so many CCR and RCR launches. I'm sorry if my previous videos or reviews were done very late to the extent it stretches beyond the launch itself, but I guess it is what it is. We had some massive delays on editing. Hopefully, I can clean that up rather quickly. So, it feels like I haven't been to the heartland areas apart from Lentor in quite some time. So it's finally here. A probable sell-out launch that will split plenty of opinions. Now, what opinions will there be? No school, no nothing, no amenities, only got MRT. Who wants to stay here? Yeah. I think you try to tell that to the dairy farm owners of Treehouse and Forest and Eco Sanctuary because they have very similar attributes, except the dairy farm area doesn't have any MRT at doorstep and only one small little mall that popped up just like recently in Dairy Farm Residences. Who wants to stay there when it's so inaccessible? No MRT, no nothing. Well, there's always reason why one would want to live in a neighborhood that is deemed inaccessible, because in today's episode of Picking the Right Launch, we go to an area that might have plenty of resistance given the lack of supply there in the longest time. And it's also a neighborhood that is relatively unknown to those who are not familiar. But for those who are familiar, it is also typically known as an atas neighborhood in the north, as majority of residents here or there resides in London. And of course, those who serve the army will have plenty of camp memories. Of course, you got nearby camps like Mandai, Sembawang, and Chong Pang Camp. Of course, Khatib also there. But most definitely for the Chinese, you will pass by there every Qingming to pay your respects to your ancestors or loved ones lost. So this is not going to be very straightforward, as it seems as there's not much data and reference point for you to benchmark due to the lack of supply, but we will try to find some indication elsewhere to give us an idea if it's for you or it isn't. Disclaimer, whatever I share does not constitute financial advice. It is solely based on my opinion on what is right or wrong. So please do your own due diligence. If you're liking the content so far, please hit the like and subscribe button, as your simple gesture will help a lot with the YouTube algorithm. If you are interested to find out more about property-related matters, please find all the social media handles I am on, or you can just directly reach out to me on WhatsApp. Separately, I have also set up a Telegram group at the start of the year so that we can have a discussion that we as agents are not allowed to do so online, which is to talk. So if you are interested to get into a community that talks about everything under the sun about property, please scan the QR code, or for the boomers out there, I have pasted the link in my description. We're going to close the group invitation in probably a month or 2 times, so head over and I will see you there. Now back to the video. So as always, we will be assessing if SpringLeaf is worth the look using our QPE framework. And for the countless of time, this is based from an investment point of view and doesn't take into account the emotional element of a purchase, because preferences can be highly subjective. Now, some context about SpringLeaf Residences. The developers got it at 905 per square foot per plot ratio back in April 2024. Now, the break-even should be approximately 1688 per square foot. Then you add in around 8% more extra for harmonization effect, and it goes to about like 1823 per square foot. Now, if I use a range of 10 to 20% profit margin conservatively, it should be between 2,000 to like 2,200 per square foot. Now, is that expensive or cheap? We will dive into that when we start comparing the prices against the layout to get a sense of the absolute price tag. Because this is a mass market area, we do expect consumers here to be more budget sensitive on the entry level rather than purely focusing on the per square foot. So let's begin. Using the QPE framework, first circle, quality, point number 1, land size, facilities and facade. Now, SpringLeaf Residences sits on a land size of close to 350,000 square feet, 344K to be exact, total 941 units, 5 blocks of 25-story and 1 conservation building of 4 stories. Now, this low-rise block is the old school that must be conserved, and conserve they did. I mean, what can you do with it? Convert it into part of like residential facilities, which is a very good idea. Then level 25 easily towers over all buildings, the entire neighborhood that has more green footfall than anything else in Singapore, I believe. As the MRT is almost at doorstep, the car park ratio stands at 80%. Now, before even looking at the site plan, and I've said this many times, you don't really have to worry so much because firstly, the land size is huge. Now, typically, huge land size allows the developers to really properly design the development itself. And then you add the element of Guacoland and ADDP Architects being the developer and architects respectively, it almost certainly going to be a no-brainer. So let's look at it if that is true or not. Now look at that, when you have the two combination, you should expect excessive greens everywhere. And it's no different here. I love it. The setup is very similar to Lentor Mansion, but I think the development has more openness due to the low-rise conserved building. With that, the developers opted to concentrate most of the main facilities around there. The Guacoland trademark Grand Lawn being hugged by the 125 meters running track. Then beside the running track, in what I think is like a structure that resembles some old school training shed, you have like 3 function rooms with a celebrity's kitchen at one end, and then a tennis court and recreational courts located just beside it. Now the looks of it does resemble some active SG or modern looking Safra compound, which is not a bad thing in the OCR area, as I believe such setup would be its strength. Then as usual, you have the pools well spread out in different spots of the land and different lawns and forest trail. It is really typical of a Guacoland project, which is hard not to like. Now every block has like a sky terrace, then each has its own gourmet and sky lounge alongside the chill out terraces. It's also the spot where you have those like greenery sticking out like the ones at Treehouse along Dairy Farm. I guess the developers want to make the building look part of the forest area. So I do not want to go through every aspect of the site plan because I'm sure there are better coverages out there, but all in all, for first point and landside facilities and facade, this is easily 9 out of 10 or almost 10 out of 10. Can you find something better on the market that has almost everything? I guess the answer is no, or maybe just 1 or 2. Now, point number 2, layouts and price. I think this is the one that I'll spend a bit more time on. When the floor plans were initially cited by a few, they commented that it looks very much like Lentor Mansion. And guess what? When I saw it, I don't think so, because it looks exactly like Lentor Mansion, bearing some like changes of the wire position. Other than that, I actually feel that it's almost identical. Anyway, let's do this. Now, smaller size and thankfully only 4 such unit. The 1 bedroom, 388 square feet. Not a fan of the 1 bedroom, so let's keep. Next up, we move to 527 square feet, 2-bedder, 1 bath, dumbbell layout. Now, the entrance and living room is not aligned entirely, a bit like slanted, but still a very clean setup nonetheless. Rooms are also all comfortable. Living, dining space also looks good enough, although the width is the smallest, the SpringLeaf Residences at about 2.8 meters. Now, as usual, dumbbell layouts got no window openings, but that's just nitpicking. You multiply between 2,000 per square foot and let's say 2,200 per square foot, it should be between $1.054 million to $1.16 million. And because it's a smaller unit, let's probably put a slightly higher number, maybe like $1.1 to $1.2 million. Now, on its own, it looks cheap because this is about the cheapest entry level now in the market, but you can't just judge in such a manner without comparing. So, who do we compare with? That's the main question, because there's nothing there besides landed properties. If we compare with the other small developments down the road like Brooks 1 or 2 or the Essence, it isn't comparing apple to apple. So for the first time, instead, I feel that we should compare with a new launch, and specifically the Lentor collection, because that's like 1 MRT stop away and it's definitely in a better location geographically speaking. Now, I've done my own research and I found that the average 2-bed 1 bath in the Lentor area is between $1.15 to $1.3 million for, of course, Lentor Mansion. And HELOC is from $1.28 million to about $1.57 million. So because SpringLeaf is 1 tier below Lentor, so from a location perspective and in an ideal world, we hope to catch the pricing that is below that to safeguard our downside risk. And the $1.1 to $1.2 million range seems to be pretty fair. And to be honest, this price usually you can only touch a 1 bedroom elsewhere. So if you can get a 2 bedroom, this is the lowest hanging fruit. Now, next up, the 2-bed, 2-bath, 646 square feet, very similar to the 2-bed, 1-bath, except you get like a U-shaped kitchen that resembles a semi-enclosed kitchen, but no, it is still not an enclosed kitchen. Again, very efficient, no toilets in the bathroom, with a little bit longer at 3.1 meters. 3.1 is quite wide. So 646 times 2,000 per square foot could see starting from like maybe $1.3 million all the way to $1.42 million averagely. Now, the entire Lentor area, 2-bed, 2-bath, of course, cheapest was, I think, Lentor Mansion, which is 1.45 to about $1.58 million. Now, the rest average between 1.5 to $1.7 million. So, the price at SpringLeaf, again, at between 1.3 to 1.42 million should be in a very comfortable zone to strike. Right? Now, there's also another 592 square feet layout for the conserved building, but since that's not the norm, I won't be covering it much. Very neat dumbbell layout also, but without a balcony overlooking the running track. Now, next one, 786 square feet, 3-bedroom compact. It's almost identical layout to the one at Lentor Mansion. Comes in straight to an open kitchen and doesn't come with a study or flexi. Now, this is what we call the semi-dumbbell layout. One room on one side and the rooms on the other. Queen, king toilet, no windows, 2,000 to 2,200 per square foot. We'll see it hitting the range of between 1.572 to like maybe $1.73 million. At quick glance, this instantly tells me that the 3 bedrooms here is almost the same price as the average 2-bed, 2-bath units at the Lentor areas. That itself will tell you a story about how affordable it is here at SpringLeaf Residences. Now, cheapest one at Lentor, again at Lentor Mansion, 1.71 to about $1.925 million for the 3 compact. And all the other 3 bedrooms in all the other projects averagely transacts between 1.8 to $2.2 million. So I don't see a concern here at SpringLeaf Residences. Now, the slightly larger one is 904 square feet. Next, this is the conventional garden layout. Rooms all tucked at one corner. Now, this feels more like a 3 premium setup with the flexi being able to double up as like both a study, storeroom, or even a maid's room. Only thing lacking from making it a proper 3-bedroom is probably like the maid's toilet at the kitchen or yard area. Rooms are queen, king. Once again, this is an almost identical layout of the Lentor Mansion units. I actually feel that Guacoland is sticking to a winning formula, and along the way, they kind of like tweaked a couple of stuff that probably wasn't ideal previously and give you a more polished answer in SpringLeaf Residences. Now, back to the 904 square feet, 2,000 to 2,200 per square foot, 1.8 to about $2 million. Lentor Mansion sold theirs between $2 to $2.2 million, and all the other developments sold theirs between 2.1 to as high as $2.5 million. So the gap between SpringLeaf and the rest is still evidently there. Now, next up, the 1,023 square feet, the largest 3-bedroom unit, which is like a 3+ study actually. A much bigger version of the 904 square feet, but with an additional household shelter and a maid's washroom. You can't really fault this layout much. The living and dining space is much bigger also and longer. Rooms, queen, king. Yeah, basically all sizes from the 904 square feet, all queen, king. Actually, if I want to afford this layout, there's just the maid's toilet being so close to the entrance and away from the household shelter, which means that if you have a helper, if you know it, you know it. Okay? Other than that, all is good. 2,000 to 2,200 per square foot, $2.05 to $2.25 million. Now, the entire Lentor area, there's probably only Lentor Mansion that has the 3+ study configuration, and of course, the layout is almost the same. It went at between 2.25 to around 2.425. Now, imagine you can get your hands here at SpringLeaf around 2.1 or below. That is some of the 3-bedroom compact unit prices at Lentor. Now, that really gives you a very good buffer against those who find that the location here is probably a tad less attractive. Now, special shout out to the 2 3-bedroom units type on the conserved building, 1,119 square feet and 1,259 square feet. A bit too big in today's market, especially it's a harmonized project. Now, both their living rooms and rooms are, of course, much larger also. The smaller unit doesn't have a balcony, and the larger one has a balcony that stretches all the way through the entire bedroom 3 and master. Now, in both floor plates, you also can notice that there's no flexi or bomb shelter. Instead, you're getting a pretty sizable yard at the back. Now, will this be an issue for buyers with families? We'll see. But the living room, my goodness, it's huge. A little bit too big, and there's only 4 of such unit type. The 4-bedroom next, 1,227 square feet. This is again the almost identical layout of the Lentor Mansion with the exception of the position of the maid's toilet. This is also like the 1,023 square feet with its slightly a little bit longer. Common bedrooms are of equal size. Master definitely has to be bigger. Now, living dining space is more elongated, like the Harry Potter style dining area. And of course, the dining also is positioned in such a way that it's parallel to the wall, and it's actually quite uncommon to do that in this manner, but it's definitely a breath of fresh air for some. Now, the complaint most had at Lentor mentioned 4-bedroom back then was that the maid's toilet opens up to the dining area. In this particular instance, the developer kind of tried to plug the gaps and of course answered that call definitely. So 2,000 to 2,200 per square foot means we go at potentially between $2.454 million all the way to $2.7 million. Over at Lentor, the cheapest was actually Lentor, I think Lentor Central at $2.4 million all the way to about $2.7 million plus for the 4-bedroom compact. Now, even Lentor Mansion was about 2.65 to as high as 2.9. Now, the average selling price for the 4 bedrooms in that Lentor neighborhood is between $2.7 million to all the way to $3.3 million. Now, Lentor Modern currently still holds the record for the most expensive 4-bedroom new launch paid for the area, but of course, the size there also very generous and big lah. Now, really at SpringLeaf, at this price point, I believe the most optimal choice in the entire development might be this unit type or even the larger 5-bedroom units, which is the biggest one here at 1,453 square feet, which resembles that of the layout at Ori, but this layout of course is a bit better in my opinion. Yet again, this is an almost identical layout to the Lentor Mansion 5-bedroom. Now the kitchen splits itself from the bomb shelter and maid's toilet, which is still annoyingly at the entrance. And that's probably my only complaint. Now all rooms can put in queen, queen, queen and king, total of 3 toilets at the front. It's really a sense of deja vu. So at 2,000 to 2,200 per square foot, we're expecting a price range of between 2.9 to about 3.2 million dollars. Now over at Lentor, there's only Lentor Mansion that has a 5-bedroom, and that also went easily between 3.2 to 3.55 million dollars. Again, if I look at it, if you can get your hands one at around 2.9 million dollars, you are buying a 5-bedroom at a 4-bedroom price elsewhere in Lentor. And given the best facing units are generally reserved for the largest unit, I expect this unit to be predominantly held by own-stay occupiers. So at the end of this video, I will share with you the reason why I think that the 4 to 5 bedrooms are the most optimal choice. Now, all in all, for second point of layout, I believe Gawker Land really stuck to their winning formula, added a few touches here and there that really makes this an even more impressive layout or even better, right? And the price point, if it ranges between 2,000 to 2,200 per square foot alongside a very efficient layout that isn't too big, it creates a very good safety net and buffer against surrounding competitions, which should be with the, or rather against Lentor Collection. I think so far we are looking pretty good. Now, point 3, location, MRT and amenities. Now, although the area doesn't have much history, meaning you don't have much people growing up here unless you are as rich as like my Asian friend who lives his entire life in semi-detached there, there's plenty of things going on in the neighborhood, and that I will cover under the point of exit strategy and under transformation. Now, the MRT at doorstep makes things so much easier and convenient. Now, you have to drive to everywhere in Singapore. This is actually much easier to get to the major expressway than even the likes of Lentor. I mean, come on, the state road to SLE is just beside. And one MRT stop down south brings you to Lentor Modern Shopping Mall. Now, if you are feeling a tad lazier, you can also just cross the road to the row of shop houses where a lot of those F&B establishments have been there for decades. You have Hans. I know some may think Hans is like quite lame, very old school, but this Hans is different. There's some fusion choices there. Of course, you also got your SpringLeaf Prata and the famous Yong Tau Hu stores. And because it's right beside the SpringLeaf Forest, it's really a location that resembles that of Dairy Farm, but with much better accessibility. Now, the whole setup will also make you feel like you are getting away from the hustle and bustle of the fast-growing Singapore. Point number 4, views. And even though I have mentioned many times that views are overrated, the views here might give SpringLeaf Residences the advantages it needs against all other competition. Now, there's only a few spots in Singapore that you can get a view like this. For those who own the larger units, it is this exact view that I expect landed downgraders or retirees to want to get a unit here to just call it a day. On one end, which is the premium facing, you get a SpringLeaf Forest view. Then towards the southern side, even though you're overlooking SLE, beyond the expressway, you also get an unblocked view of the Upper Pierce Reservoir and the Thomson Nature Park. And then as usual, some will face the pool with a partial unblocked view of the landed properties. This should be the biggest strength of the development. So for first circle of quality, I think Walker Land did what Walker Land is famous for, a modern-looking development that has plenty of green footprint. Now the land size is huge, facilities are amazing, beside MRT, comes with a view, got food also, price point gonna look very attractive, but it lacks something. And more on that in just a bit. Because second circle, exit strategy, for number one, supply demand, this is likely one of only 2 developments that is beside the MRT. So from a supply perspective, there's nothing to complain. Some may say that you got to take into account Lentor in, but I think let's be fair, this stands alone, at least for now, until Parcel A gets snapped up. So no issues on this aspect. Now point number 2, schools. Remember I had a but just now in the first circle, but there's no school in the 2 km radius. This is the biggest but for me, unfortunately. Now, do I expect the take-up rates to be low because of that? No, I don't think so, but it doesn't give it that competitive edge. Now, family with kids who are still in school will almost certainly get a unit here only if the kids are probably older, because you want a ballot, also got nothing to ballot for primary school. This might just be the biggest objection, but I still believe that the strength far outweighs the flaws here at SpringLeaf Residences, which is very similar to that of Treehouse at Dairy Farm. Point number 3, transformation. Now, I don't like to talk about this much, but I guess I have to because it's definitely worth a mention. Now, the big plot of land right opposite and beside the SpringLeaf lander is earmarked for residential purposes. Now, this stretches all the way to the Lentor Avenue and the northern side where the old prawning area was located, which is Lorong Chenchuru. That is going to be a brand new township. And at this point of recording, it has also been announced that the Khatib camp will make way towards the redevelopment of the entire neighborhood that will see it emerging as one in the Chenchuru area. Now, this is going to bring so much more people into the neighborhood, but if you are a typical flipper between 4 to 5 years, all this really shouldn't affect you much. This will probably make you see things slightly a little bit different in the 10 to 15 years horizon. Point number 4, target audiences. It is not difficult to understand this. Obviously, it's almost certainly going to be the HDB upgraders, mainly from the north, perhaps a niche group of condo upgraders up in the Sembawang, Yishun, or even Woodlands, who wants a change in location to something as convenient as SpringLeaf, yet nestled in an area that has so much greens into it. So for the circle or exit strategy, with the exception of the lack of schools, I don't see any issues with the exit here. OCR, big plot, good facilities, exit should be the least of concern. Now, in conclusion, we are finally back here in the OCR area, but it's also a pretty darn convenient location itself. Up until this point, everything looks like what the mass market crowd will and can accept. I'm not sure what more can you ask for. Well, is it a much better location than Lentor? I disagree. I think we still got to give Lentor its fair share of respect, as the properties there are tad level higher than SpringLeaf. But if your prices have already been factored in, then this is definitely something you can consider for your own use and even for pure investment. And what are the 2 units that would probably be the most optimal choice? Not saying the rest is not worthwhile, but perhaps the top 2 choices, like I can imagine you having no issue selling and have no lack of suitors. What exactly it is? It's the 4 and 5 bedrooms. Now, why is that so? Because one of the biggest selling points of SpringLeaf Residences is that you are staying beside a forested area. Now, you're held entirely by the forest to the extent there's a certain guideline on URA's side that the developers must adhere to prevent the animals from causing trouble. There's really a lot of greens, plenty of tranquility and serenity. As mentioned previously, we expect not only upgraders for this unit type, we might also see quite some bit of downgraders retiring in there or buyer hunting for a unit there for this specific reason, which is the tangible part of a property purchase. The feel-good factor, the emotional element, this is something not to be underestimated, because not everything is measured just by dollars and cents or simply paper. And because we believe that the key driver of the real estate market are still the HDB upgraders, the 4 to 5 bedrooms is and still are the natural upgrade for HDB upgraders who are looking to upgrade their status and bedroom count. And since most people get it for own use, if you think about it, when you hold one as an investor and when it's time to sell or rent, Do you think it's easy or it's going to be difficult? Finally, remember that in an ideal world, if it's purely for investment, not one for own use, there should be some discount off the property's rental. And if you know that one of the key selling points is the entry level, if you so foolishly go hit the mid to high floor units, then this is really what I call FOMO. Because always stick to the plan, watch out for your entry level, the price you pay for, and do not deviate from that.